Hey, what's up, everybody? Navid Moazzez here, and today I'm here with my good friend Arman Assadi. And Arman is the founder of ArmanAssadi.com. He helps solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs identify their life's craft, create their own freedom lifestyle, and build creative online businesses. He is a former Googler, turned solopreneur, writer, consultant. He's a soccer player, an obsessive world traveler, and is currently based in San Francisco. And he's also the board of directors president for Traveling Stories, a nonprofit organization working to outsmart poverty one book at a time. And I think we connected a while back. Actually, we've been trying to do this, like we had a chat actually a week prior to this interview, and we decided to just do this, as a way for my audience to get to know you a little bit better, Arman. And obviously we can connect more. We can talk about, why you left Google, and then also get into your new projects you have, especially when it comes to finding your craft. And that's something I'm very passionate about myself. I had Robert Greene on my podcast. I've been speaking to Cal Newport, and some great authors also have a lot to say about this topic. But today we're going to dive into what you have to say and your story, which is very inspiring. So first of all, warm welcome, Arman.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Navid. It's great to talk to you, be here, man.
Definitely. So, man, just for my audience, they probably haven't heard so much about you since you have your blog, which you're kind of in a transition phase. You're kind of transitioning from why I left Google.com to now ArmanAssadi.com, which is an interesting transition, more of a personal brand. And we talked in the pre-chat here why you are doing this and so on. But can you get into really the story of like you got into Google, or maybe the backstory in the first place, how you got there and how you got where you are today? That would be really cool.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I was like everybody else, sort of, looking for the right job as soon as I was done with college. And I got really lucky because I wasn't exactly the type of person that was always very diligent in my studies in school. The education system just didn't sit well with me. It didn't really fit the mold of who I was. And I think you can identify with this a lot too, especially being a law student and kind of feeling lost and disillusioned. I definitely turned into a zombie a lot of times within the education system and thought, okay, if I just find the right job and the right craft for me, I'm going to be able to sort of identify my niche in life a little bit better, find the proper vocation, which led to, I eventually was in this class that actually, served my style. And, it was more of a sort of a debate class, actually. And this guy, the professor, recommended me for a position at 3M. So after that, I moved out to New York City, and I was one of two people that gets recommended for this position all year through this guy. And this was back in like 2009, where the market was really bad, and university students were just like having a really tough time getting jobs. And I was super lucky, corporate credit card, company car, living in Manhattan, not making amazing money, but like living the good life and like living that dream that I thought was being sort of a sales guy. And I worked my way up within 3M, and yet still I sort of eventually hit a point where I knew there was a part of me that wasn't quite satisfied. And just around that time, a recruiter from Google who happened to go to school with me at San Diego State called me. And she was like, here's the deal. We're looking for someone like you. I looked at your background, what you've done. You worked your way up really quickly at 3M as a key account manager. We need someone like this at Google in like Phoenix or something. 6 months later, crazy interview process. I ended up actually in Mountain View at the headquarters for a position there in the Google Apps team. And funny enough, the first thing I ever did as a solopreneur after Google had to do with what I learned on the Google Apps team. And we can get to that too. But yeah, I was at Google, and during the times, I mean, Google is everything you imagine it to be. It really is, I think, the healthiest, happiest, highest quality of life you can possibly have in a job. But yet there was always this sort of this wonder, this itch of, is this the right move for me? And as long as I was working on roles that were really challenging and used my natural, unique genius and craft, I was good. I was happy. But change happens a lot. And so different things happen in the organization, product changes, role changes, and eventually the organization I was in started to slow down. We started to focus less on the product. And a lot of people started to leave, move to different organizations, and even leave the company, which left me sort of going like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? And I started interviewing for different roles and nothing stood out. And all of a sudden, I just made this decision where, well, not all of a sudden, it definitely was a struggle and it was very difficult to make this decision because I was scared out of my mind. I was like, I know I want to be an entrepreneur. I know about this idea of creating small online businesses, but I have no idea what to do. I don't know where to start. I don't have any background. None of the skills that I have at Google are going to help me because I wasn't like a coder, developer, or anything like that. So I went to Cuba, which I'm not supposed to as an American the way I went. Went to Cuba for a couple weeks and just enjoyed myself, but at the same time sat down to think about what I was going to do. And the decision I made was I'm going to launch a blog. And that's sort of the long game because I love writing. I know that about myself. I want to write. I want to share my journey. And at the same time, I'm going to create an information product, which at the time I knew very little about. But lucky enough, I had one friend who had some background in this industry who was my roommate. And he sort of got me started down that path of understanding what it is to create a product based on your knowledge, your intellectual property, if we may call it that. And that was my sort of start into the world of online business.
Wow. Actually, I haven't heard this part of the story. Yeah, we chatted, but that's inspiring. So you were at Google. So how can you tell us a little bit about how maybe something you learned there that you could take now to your existing business? I'm sure there's so much, like I'm sure they have extensive training and, they put in a lot of money to having, keeping their employees, especially if they're high quality. So share something there that you actually took from that job, because I'm sure a lot of people in my audience or watching this, they might be saying, okay, I'm in a job right now, but how can I take my existing skills and knowledge, expertise, and take that into my next venture? Maybe you want to start a business. Maybe that's the thing, identifying or finding your craft to go into the next thing and making it profitable for you.
Yeah. So first of all, a great question. When it comes to what I learned from Google and what I think people should be, people who are in a job or have access to a startup or corporate environment where they have access to resources, here's how I would approach this aspect of it. First of all, being at Google meant I was surrounded by the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And you know this better than anybody that we're the product of the 5 people we're around most often. And so this just made me step up my game to a level that I had never played at before. I mean, I was constantly looking for ways to grow. The aspect of, first of all, some of the things I learned at Google that I took away and I think separate me from other solopreneurs and entrepreneurs. First of all, I approach my work truly as an organized enterprise, as a business. I'm not wearing a tie every day and I'm not being all tough about it and being like overly organized and structured, but I do understand what it takes to structure my business in a way that if I needed to move a virtual assistant in or a new employee, I would easily be able to carve something out for them to do. So approaching your business and your online business or your company, even if it's just one person, it's very critical to understand the different siloed, maybe mini organizations that are within your company of Navid Incorporated, right? The other big thing that I really took away was, Larry Page, who was at the time the CEO, which there's been some organizational changes at Google. I'm sure you might have seen that with Alphabet and all this stuff. Now, at the time, the big buzzword that he was always driving home was laser focus. And we all from the outside have looked at Google cut so many products and services. And as soon as they feel that they've sort of overstepped into an area that doesn't quite align with Google's mission statement, and Google itself, the search engine, which has all of these products and services, essentially the mission statement is very clear for them. Organize all the world's information, right? And make it easy and make it accessible. So as soon as a product or service doesn't fall into that and they find that this is not going to be not just profitable, but does not align with their vision, it's done. There's no sense of, the cost and opportunity cost and so on and so forth, or the sunk cost. It's not even thought about. So this idea of laser focus really helped me with my branding, which is why right now, as you mentioned in the very beginning, my branding continues to get more and more laser focused. In the beginning, it was very focused on, this idea of simply sharing my journey with one person. And really the writing that I do is for myself a lot of times. It's just documenting different aspects of what I'm learning. And over time, I've learned to do a better job of that, to be more transparent, to be more open. And so those were some of the big things that I took away. But if somebody was in the corporate environment, there is an abundance of resources that they're paying for. I mean, think of all the software that they have licensed from different learning educational companies, tests and assessments to better understand who you are, human resources type stuff. I mean, all that is education and it's free. So I would highly recommend that anybody that has access to things like that, do it. Because as you know, as an entrepreneur, you're paying a lot of money for this stuff on a yearly basis to attend conferences, to take different assessments, to better understand yourself. And if you have access to these things, I mean, by all means, you just got to jump in and dive in so that you can better understand who you are. I mean, understanding your strengths, so we'll use the Strengths Finder book and assessment as an example, is one of the keys to sort of knowing what your sweet spot should be within your own business. And in the beginning, as you know, I mean, it's so difficult as a solopreneur because we're doing everything.
Yeah.
And eventually we do need to keep in mind what the strengths are so that we can then go, you, Sally, are this role, and Jonathan's going to be this role, because my goal is to eventually get to that role.
Right.
So you have to have that in mind.
I actually, that's something I want to get into a little bit, because as you might have seen, or we didn't know each other at the time, Arman, but in the very beginning when I started out in June 2013, it was very simple. I used the premium WordPress theme, by Studio Press, and I figured things out, how to set things up. And, I didn't have a designer or a coding background. I learned how WordPress worked. I learned how to optimize my blog post a little bit, write the content in there. And that was it pretty much. But then as you evolve and I got more and more interested into branding, and I did some research, I decided to invest more in my brand. So I found a designer. I think it was around Christmas time, or maybe November, December 2013. So I found a designer there, and that's how I upped my game a little bit in terms of starting to build out a little asset. I had a team there. So, well, one designer at the time. Now, we're in 2015. I'm hiring copywriters, assistants. So it's kind of growing from there. But I started by myself, as a solopreneur, still hustling, blogging a lot. And now I'm trying to build out a team, because that's not my strength. All these things, I can do it, but I cannot, I'm not an expert in building websites. So why not have someone else do that for me? So I want to bring that back to you, Arman. Like when you started your website, now why I left Google, now armanassadi.com, what's the difference? Did you do everything yourself for your first site? And what do you do now? Like, tell us a little bit about this.
Oh, man. I actually kept a couple screenshots of the original website so I can look back at it and just laugh and think about it, because I look back now and I go, wow, what a hideous piece of shit. That is just what was that? It was so cheap and this and that. But at the time, it was 6 months of sitting and designing and detail and just getting it down exactly the way I wanted it. I mean, it literally took me, I think 5 months from the time I decided I wanted to do a blog to launching the blog live, which is insane. And it's because I really had zero background in this arena. I would never let anybody I know do what I did, because first of all, it doesn't matter. You just have to get started and you can iterate and change things afterward. But the perfectionist side of me did that. So I did everything myself for probably a good, I would say the first year, maybe year and a half. I mean, everything. Understanding what type of articles to write and identifying content marketing strategies, to the WordPress stuff, to, I mean, everything. Every technical aspect was all done by me. At this point now, I think we're coming up on September, or just this summer was 3 years ago that I started doing this for myself, right? And I remember I spoke to a guy, Jonathan, I want to get his name right. It was because I want to give him credit here. It was Jonathan Waldman. He wrote one of the dummy books, Social Media for Dummies, I think. And I remember connecting with him, and I was like, dude, this is rough, man. I'm doing everything myself, and money is hard, and I'm so focused on the money, but then I feel like when I focus on the money, I get less of it. When I do what I'm supposed to do, The money somehow shows up, and he's like, dude, it's all going to click around like year 2.5, 3. And I was like, all right. And literally, I mean, I would say it was about maybe a year, 6 months ago that everything started clicking, understanding this concept of, you know, there's this idea of sort of everything that we're doing, every blog post that we're creating, every product that we're promoting. It's like sending a Coke bottle out into the ocean. Yeah. You don't really know when that reward is going to show up. So if you write a blog post about hosting, you may not, as a sort of, you know, preliminary early stage blogger, feel and see the rewards for quite some time, right? And yet all of a sudden you pull up an account, your Aweber, you know, affiliate account, and you see, wow, I made $500 last month and I didn't even know what I did. What did I do? Oh yeah, I wrote a post 6 months ago that linked to it, or I have it in my resources section, and I forgot about it. And so over time, I think these things start to develop. And I've gotten to a point now where, you know, I do a lot of consulting through people that find me through the blog. And I also do a lot of freelancing and different things, different projects come up, mainly in the areas of content and overall online business strategy. And I've gotten to the point where, you know, for example, right now with my website transition, I hired the best agency, you know, in California. I mean, in San Diego, they're #1, and in California, they're one of the best. And I paid a lot of money to simply get a blueprint from an SEO consultant that says this is exactly how to do it. Because that's at this point how much this all matters to me. And now I have to get a developer who I'm interviewing after our call that's going to go through the SEO to tell me exactly what to do it, or he's going to do it, but go through these aspects. But I never would have been able to do that. And ultimately what matters is that these things all just build on each other. I'm sure you say the same thing. It's like you get one success after another that builds on top of each other, multiple streams of revenue. You know, I still have my information products revenue, my consulting revenues, my affiliate revenues. And ultimately you sit there and go, all right, what's the best way to spend this money to now double or grow my business?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. And also that is this tipping point, you know, when things will start to take off a little bit for you. For me, that was around, you know, 1.5 years after I started, like the 18 months or so. That was when I had my summit and things took off. But before that, it was this occasion. I mean, every once in a while I had this $1,000 coaching coming in, or, you know, some affiliate payments here and there, but it was by any means, I couldn't live with that. So I want to, before we get into this, like some strategies for people, you know, finding their craft, I want to also talk about, I read on your About page that you worked with some interesting people. And I want to talk about this, especially like Chad Mureta. I read about that, and also Jeff Walker. So I think people can learn about this because you build relationships with them, like a really great relationship by helping them out. So tell us a little bit about how you connected with them and how you added value to them, basically. I think that's really valuable.
Sure. It's really funny, Navid. It's like super ironic. I was looking at my phone while I was at the gym this morning and like popped into Facebook. And you know how Facebook tells you memories now of like different things that have happened in the past? So 1 year ago today was when I virtually met and began working with Jeff Walker. So that was really funny to me. It was literally this day last year that project began. So I'll start with that one, and then I'll tell you about Chad Mureta. So Jeff actually sent an email out to his list about 1 year and 3 months ago that he was looking for a content manager to come in, a content manager superstar to come in and basically help with all various aspects of content. Now, this was immediately, again, ironically, and I don't believe in coincidences anymore because there's just too freaking many of them. Immediately after reading Mastery by Robert Greene, finally, which we were talking about before the call, I began to embrace this idea of taking the long-term approach even more. I said, you know what? I am naturally a learner and a student. And all I really want to do ultimately with the rest of my life is learn and teach, because naturally I feel like I have an insatiable appetite for books and information. And people have said over and over and over to me again, Arman, you have a very natural teaching style. I would love for you to dissect something for me and explain it to me because it makes sense when you explain it. I go, okay, ding, ding, ding. These are clues, right? So I go, what is the long approach to this? And I said, all right, if I want to learn how to become a New York Times bestselling author, a guy who creates 7-figure product launches, a guy who is adored by his community, what is the best way in order to do that? It is to get as close as possible to that person. And when it comes to finding a mentor, which is the way I looked at Jeff, he may not have known that at the time. He may have saw it as a position or a job or something like that. But to me, it was an opportunity to become an apprentice, to learn from somebody. And I say that there are 3 ways that I have found to get a mentor. Number 1 is to hire them literally to help you, like a coach. Find them on Clarity or hit them up with an email and say, I'll pay you a few $100 for your time, just a call. And they might even say, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. A lot of times they do. The second way is to work for them or do some sort of creating value, adding value, assisting them, helping them. An example here is what I did with Jeff. But the second way is, for example, Pat Flynn. The first way I connected with Pat Flynn was I listened to his podcast, heard him say, I'm having problems with my inbox. And I went, dude, I can help him with that. My first information product was called Effortless Email. It's on Udemy and it's on its own channel still. I still continue to sell it. And it's helped, I think, like 1,800 people go from thousands and thousands of emails to 0. And I'm like, if there's someone who can do this, who worked on the Gmail team, it's me. Hey, Pat, I used to work on the Gmail team. Let me help you. He's like, oh, I just hired someone to help me. Why don't you work with her and me and we'll figure this out? Bing, perfect. That's the second way to build a relationship or find a mentor. And the third way is to become friends with them, which I think is the hardest way. But for some people, it's very natural. I think for a guy like you, for example, look at what you've done in your community in terms of, as you said, it only was 1.5 years until you just like, all of a sudden, had this sort of notoriety and expertise in a specific area, but it's because you developed all these relationships, right? Like a lot of people have talked to you, know who you are, you make the effort to go meet them in person, you go to these conferences, it's critical. So those are the 3 ways. And with Jeff, it was an opportunity to get in there and literally put together Product Launch Formula 5.0 or 2015, as we were calling it internally. And essentially, I mean, this is a product that he launches about once a year that has helped thousands and thousands of people learn how to put on a product launch, whether it's e-commerce or information or whatever. Being on the inside of that world and understanding how a business like this runs was the most mind-blowing thing I've ever experienced. I mean, my growth in like 3, 4, 5 months in that initial few months went like from a 6 to a 10, if there was a scale. It was incredible. So I highly recommend people look for opportunities like that, even if it means putting their own thing on hold sometimes. So that's what I mean when I say I take the long approach to this a lot of times, is I don't mind not creating my next course right now in order to learn from the best people so that when I do it like a freaking rock star. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
And I love this. This is so timely because people actually don't know this, like from my perspective, but yes, I did the branding summit. I've been learning a lot of things. I'm putting together like a 6-figure summit with Chandler. It was insanely successful. But when it comes to my own product launches, I haven't really done any product launches in terms of an online course, stuff like that. But now that I'm launching Virtual Summit Mastery, actually people will be, not that I'm expecting, I'm actually not optimizing for revenue the first time. I'm actually optimizing for just learning experience, but people will see that is more professional than you usually see from a launch. Like I decided to spend a lot of time on, I had a pilot program leading up to this. So I've been learning from a lot of people, not exactly like so close like you, you went in there and worked with Jeff, but I've been modeling other people. I've been looking at Derek Halpern, Ramit Sethi, which is like a virtual mentor to me. I'm in Zero to Launch and so on. So I've been seeing like a lot of successful launches leading up to my launch, like a ton of them. Sign up to the email list, like 5, 6 of them. Amy Porterfield does a fantastic job. Derek Halpern, Ramit Sethi, obviously Jeff Walker. There's a ton of people who are doing this like on a regular basis, and I learned from them. Like, for example, my video series, I got inspired by David Seidman Garland, and I was like, okay, so I have a course, a little bit different topic, but still similar. How can I do this the best way to add value to the people who will go through this and eventually purchase my program? So I have the same approach pretty much. This is a long game. You know,
It
you gotta
really
be
is. It
you're
really
gonna be in business for not only 1 year. This is like that's why we are talking about this here, how to find your craft, because it's not what you're going to do for 1 year or transition. This is something you can transition later, but the thing is that there's a long game to get mastery in something, to achieve this mastery in business and life. Because I think in Robert Greene's interview and also in Cal Newport's we talk about the 10,000 hours. You know, I think it was Erickson or something like that said that it takes 10,000 hours of I think it's like this deep work. You gotta like really focus. And I like that you said this too, like about laser focus, which is in Google's organization. But it's so true. If you have this laser focus and not just jump around from one thing to another, and focus and put in the time and put in the hours, then you're gonna reach mastery and also have these people coming to you and all these things. It's just fantastic what can happen.
Really, truly. I want to comment on that, and then I'll tell you about the Chad story because it'll tie in nicely to the craft. But I cannot tell you how many people I work with or know that have incredible ideas. They have the foundations of a 7-figure business, but the number one thing that they don't know how to do is to speak to one person, to identify their persona of who they're truly targeting, who they're speaking to, whether they're a writer or blogger, who they're trying to sell to if it's an e-commerce product, who the service is supposed to help and transform their life. They think that it helps everybody because it might one day. Just like me, when I started my blog, I thought, well, I mean, this is good for people who are in the corporate world, and this is good for people who are solopreneurs, and this is good for, and I was like, everyone, and moms, they might want to make the transition. But if you don't identify that one person and build everything with laser focus for them, to serve them, to make sure that they get exactly what they need, and you're constantly getting feedback from them and tweaking the product, without that, you're never going to get anywhere. I mean, I'm working, I don't want to put anybody out on blast, but I'm working with a company right now that I'm basically helping them as a strategist and doing some copywriting and things like that. And they have this incredible service that is essentially a search engine for a product that is going to help thousands and thousands of people. But yet they're thinking, is this an advertising model that I should go for? Because if we get people on the site, we can be like the Google and we can get people to pay us to advertise on our site. Or should we just be a really good search engine so that the end user gets exactly what they need? Or no, wait, maybe we should go with a premium model and charge people a subscription in order to search on our site. And there's all these various directions that they're going, and none of it makes sense. Because me as the prospective user, when I land on a website, there's 3 questions I'm asking myself. What is it? Who is it for? And what is it going to do for me? Right? How is this going to help me? What does it do? And so if I can't make sense of that right away, I'm out. I bounce, as we call it in our world, right? So that is something that I think is so critical for people to get really focused on what they're doing and continue to do one building block at a time instead of just like project here, project over there, and getting pulled in different directions.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, before we get into this Chad Moretta story, I definitely want to hear that. I'm sure it was valuable for my audience. But first, like you seem to, you went into work with Jeff Walker and so on, and you got some of your training there. But you mentioned also that you would like to read a lot of books and all this. So where did you get kind of your informal education, so to speak? Did you learn some things in Google, or at the same time you were kind of studying this online marketing? Where did you learn, and what resources can you recommend?
Yeah. So no, everything has been very sequential, left Google, kind of experimented on my own. And for the first year and a half, I think what we did differently was I didn't really network and value other people. I thought I was going to be fine on my own and figuring it out. And instead, the biggest lesson that I learned during that time is partnerships are critical to success, and getting close to people that are successful is even more critical. So I made many mistakes throughout my time. And the way that, some of the tools and resources that have helped me, for example, the thing that really pushed me to do this, to become a solopreneur, was the book $100 Startup, The $100 Startup by Chris Guillebeau. He's one of my favorite authors for many reasons. But the thing about that book was I read it and I went, there's a dude selling mattresses on a bicycle in Portland. What's stopping me? I mean, why? I mean, there's all these people. There's a painter. There's a guy that's teaching languages. I mean, the opportunity seems to be wide open here as long as you know sort of what you want to do and you get started and you take action and you iterate and change and evolve. So that was one resource that was really important for me. But I've had many influencers along the way, and I think that mainly lately it's become people like Jeff, you know, working with people like Chad. But Eben Pagan is another one that I have been through a lot of Eben's courses. So for those that don't know, Eben Pagan is he's a very, very renowned online business person. He's got this big virtual team of dozens of people making millions of dollars a year selling information products mostly and coaching products. And I've been through some of his courses, for example, there was one, it was like a guru product, creating an information course, guru product blueprints or something. And that's sort of what helped me create my initial course, Effortless Email. As ugly as it was, and as much as it wasn't exactly what I wanted, it got me going. So that was another one. But there's many influencers and people I have. I would say the main place I've been learning is just sort of by watching and emulating and stealing like an artist. So there's another one. Austin Kleon has a book, Steal Like an Artist. Awesome. So the idea of it, it's okay. It's actually a kind thing that you're doing. It's a flattering thing you're doing by having role models and picking and choosing what you like, not swiping it and copying it, but like making it your own. So that's been also really critical for me.
Yeah, man. I think that's something we've done very similar. I mean, I'm all about looking what's working for other people and then taking bits and pieces of that and making it your own, as you said. Like, you know, you can't copy someone's blog post or entire sales pages, but what you can do is take the elements, because you can see, okay, if Amy Porterfield has a launch, she has a big team, she's making millions of dollars, and it's probably safe to say that she spent a lot of money testing this, right? So it's working, especially if you are in the marketing space, and you can kind of know if you're going to do something similar, like in a little different market, maybe see what she's doing there, because she tested this for a lot of money and doing ads and all this to this page. So you know this sales page is working. That's kind of how I figure things out myself, you know, and also obviously studying copywriting, and now I have more funds to also hire out some things if I want that. But I have still the skill to do it myself if I want to. It's just a matter of how much time are you willing to spend on this. But I always want is like, now it's talking about copywriting, stuff like that. I always want to have, you know, my say into this. So if I have a copywriter, I always want to take a look at it, so make sure it's in my voice, it's my words, and all this stuff. So that's just like how I'm doing things differently from when I started. Now I have a copywriter on board, and she's helping me with different things for my launch now.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say things like, I don't have time to learn. I'm too busy in my business, or for example, I don't have the money to get help. I can't outsource things. I can't hire people. But you have to carve out the time. I mean, if you schedule it, it will get done. And if you're good about how you schedule things, you can honestly do that. I mean, for example, for me, I've gotten to the point where my desire to read and learn and go through blog posts and read different books and so on and so forth was so high and so important to me that I started waking up at 5 a.m. And now I have time, 30 minutes in the morning after my workout, to sit and read. I mean, if you would have said that to me a few months ago, I would have laughed my ass off. I would have been like, are you serious? You want me to wake up at 5 a.m.? Because I've always been a night owl. That's the way I identified myself. But in order to achieve that level of mastery, and in order to be a diligent student, I was like, that's it. I have to make a change. I have to create that time. No more excuses. So whatever it takes. And my whatever it takes was wake up at 5, do my morning ritual, make time to learn.
Yeah. And I just want to get into that, actually. I love when people telling me their morning ritual or daily routine. So why don't you tell us your routine here, Arman? I think that's great. You know, obviously I had Hal Elrod, the author of The Miracle Morning, on my show before. And I mean, I was very inspired by that book personally, and really, you know, getting up earlier. I don't do it every day, but the days I do really stick to my routine, the ritual, and all these things, I'm much more productive. And also planning kind of tomorrow, today, or the night before, planning what you're gonna do, that's key to really the level of productivity, what I get on, get done the next day. So how does it look for you, Arman?
Well, so I just want to be clear. When I say 5 a.m., I want to be clear. When I used to hear people saying they wake up early, I would just go, that's not me. And you can ask anybody I know, I am a night owl, or I will say I was. And 3 weeks ago, I read Early Rising by Benjamin Franklin. I believe the full title is, something like Early to Rise. I can't remember the full title. Early Rising, if you type that in, Benjamin Franklin. There's a free ebook for it online. Oh, that's what it is. Makes a man, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I read this book, and that book is like injected with some magic stuff, man, because for some reason, it just all of a sudden became extremely clear to me that for me, my kryptonite was not waking up early. Every time I allowed myself to sleep in, for the rest of the day, I was like frustrated and behind and constantly playing catch up. And I've always known it would make a big difference, but I knew it wasn't natural for me. That's the lie. That's the BS I would tell myself. So this is now my morning ritual. So first, I got myself to do that. I'm on day like 20 right now and I'm trying to go 66 days. That's my goal. And I actually have a Post-it note. You probably can't see this, but I have a Post-it note right behind on the wall here. So basically I wake up and I hydrate. I just go super hydration. And lately I've been putting Himalayan pink sea salt in the water because that's supposed to like just set off your adrenals and give you some natural energy. I think that's that's a bulletproof thing, I think. So then I just go straight into making like a green juice, like a vegetable juice. I blend it so it's like a smoothie, I guess. And I go straight to the gym. I jog to the gym. I'm in there by like 5:20, 5:30. Right now I'm doing like heavy lifting. I've gotten back into like strength training, more like Pavel type stuff, more like military kind of heavy lifting type thing. But I also play soccer, so I try to maintain flexibility and stay like limber. Come back and drink some, do a little bit more nutrition, and then I meditate. I meditate for 20 minutes, and generally about 20 minutes, and that's my domino, I call it. I have to do the meditation. If the rest of it doesn't happen and I do the meditation, I'm good. Nothing can happen that day that I can't handle. Then I just do like a brain dump. Sometimes I do this before, sometimes I do this after. If there's a lot on my mind before I meditate, I just grab my notebook and start writing stuff out. That's very important to like sort of empty the mind before you start the day. And then I shower, make my coffee, and do my first task. So the night before, I make sure I know exactly what my number one most important task is, which has always in the past been the thing that I procrastinate on and keeps moving from Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday and keeps moving. And now, because of the morning ritual, it's very clear what the first task is, and I get to it right away. And then you feel like $1,000,000 freaking bucks because for me, it's like it's 7 a.m. I've done all these things and I'm working on my first task already. So it's powerful stuff. And I agree, Hal Elrod is fantastic.
That's amazing. And I just wanted to ask, when do you go to bed since you're waking up very early now? So are you still getting like 7-8 hours of sleep? So you're kind of resting so you feel more energy in the morning when you're waking up, but full of power. You want to get on with your day.
Yeah, I'm going to bed at around 10, and I'm still adjusting because I think I'm still finding it. It's still becoming a sort of habit that's forming. I think the natural spot would be somewhere around like 9:45, just right over 7 hours of sleep. I think most people sleep too much, and I say that because I used to sleep too much. And I thought I needed 8 hours, but I think in general we need about 6 to 7, and we'll actually find that we have more energy when we're in that sort of 6 to 7. I think anything less than 6 is too little, and then you're sleep deprived and you'll struggle. But what I do is if I accidentally, like if I can't fall asleep, I'll take based on how little sleep I got the night before, you can take a 20-minute nap or you can take a 90-minute nap. If you get that 90-minute nap in, that's one full REM cycle. So if I only slept 5 hours for some reason, I still will do what it takes to get up at 5. And then in the afternoon, I'll do a 90-minute nap, and then I'm at 6.5 hours.
Yeah, for sure. No, I completely agree. And I think Hal Elrod, she shares a lot of good things there, how you can get to that in the Miracle Morning if you're really struggling. And you can definitely check that out. I think that's a
Yeah, yeah.
great starting point. But I want to get back a little bit to this Chad Mureta story, how that relates also now to, we can give people some, we've been talking about this. So I think people can still find, how do they find their craft, with, getting from maybe their job, finding the skill set they can take to a new venture, like an online business we are doing, being solopreneur, entrepreneur, whatever you want to do. So how does this story with Chad relate to this, what you are kind of helping people with now?
Yeah, sure. So, when I met Chad initially, it was, I think 3 years ago. It was right around the time I started on my own. I actually was still at Google, and I was about to leave to Cuba, and he was in my living room because my roommate at the time, who I mentioned, is sort of, has been in this industry. His name's Jason Adams, and he was helping Chad with his App Empire launch, which he did a big product launch, and it was a whole information product. And just for those that don't know, Chad is the author of App Empire, and he created a course that was same name, App Empire, and there's a big appreneur community. And he did very, very well in the app space, and then sort of got into this education space as well. At the time, I knew who Chad was, and I understood what his role was. And a lot of people, I think, they see sort of like, we talk about a shiny object. They see like a shiny person. And instead of just trying to get to know the person and naturally become friends with them, they go straight to what's in it for them, which is awful. And people can feel that right away. And I feel that all the time when people do that to me. I can't stand it. So Chad and I literally became friends. He was at my birthday party. We started partying together. And as of today, he's one of my best friends. And ultimately, all this was a friendship that I developed over time. About a year ago, we've both been kind of doing our thing, and Chad has certain strengths and certain weaknesses, just like me. And there were areas where Chad's business was weak, and I said, I can help you there. I can help you get organized and strategic. I can come in and do a lot of the operations. I can help you with these product launches and affiliate launches. So that's exactly what I did. Earlier this year, I went in and started helping him. I did a lot of that as a friend, and then we sort of made it official. I was like, bring me on, let's do this. So there was different, the email marketing that was done. I went in there and sort of developed a lot of the emails and wrote a lot of the different things and just started helping him at a higher level with the strategy. And that has now evolved to, I'm not so much involved in App Empire anymore, but we've just been always going back and forth and strategizing, helping each other's audiences. He gives stuff for my audience. I give stuff for his. And it's gotten to the point where we developed a mastermind together. I read Think and Grow Rich again, and I was like, I got to do this. I got to do this because I read it when I was really young and it didn't all sort of click and take action. And after I read it, I just called Chad and I was like, dude, listen, we need to do this. I know you know good people. I know good people. Let's do this. We went to this mastermind. We started putting it together. And at the last sort of annual retreat, I proposed this idea of how ultimately I'm a learner and a teacher. And what I really care about is helping people identify their life's craft. That may not be for the rest of my life, but I know that this current phase right now is the area that I want to not only achieve mastery, but really make an impact in this area. There's a lot of things that are sort of surface level that we teach people, but I want to dig in really deep and develop resources and tools that are science-based, that people can rely on and confidently, like a Strengths Finder or like the What Color Is Your Parachute book, they can come to this and say, okay, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I will pass to my friends because it's so powerful. That's what I'm trying to create. He got so excited, he said, I'm in. Let's actually do this together. Let's work together and put this together. So that is one of the things that I have been working on very privately, secretly, in the dungeon, in the lab for a few months now. And this is one of the first times I'm really telling people sort of at a broader level. I spoke at the Commonwealth of California a month or two ago, and I sort of teased about it there. But we're getting a lot closer now, and I'm getting to the point where we have brought, again, there's been so many little coincidences. I met amazing, someone who has been developing personality and behavioral assessments for years, who is an expert in this industry. She's on board and helping us develop this assessment. So essentially, we're going to have what I think is going to be the new sort of standard for helping people identify their craft as a solopreneur. And the idea is that we are combining things from StrengthsFinder, from identifying your vocation in life, to what type of leader are you? For example, there's a lot of different types of entrepreneurs that they're more people oriented, right? And so they naturally might be like me, where they are a good supporter or a good star, maybe even. And it's important for them to be people facing and not be in the spreadsheets and doing the accounting. Taking things like that into consideration so that you understand what type of industry and market should you be in and what should your role be in that. So there's all these layers on top that begin just with personality, go to behavior, go to the markets and industries that are what I consider the top 7 to 10 sort of online businesses that are hot right now that people are doing well in, and giving people a step-by-step framework for actually implementing this. So I'm incredibly excited about it because it's not only something that I'm passionate about, but I get to learn about this world, and I'm going to be able to teach it through many different avenues, whether it be through this assessment or speaking and coaching, whatever it might be.
It's very, very cool. I'm really looking forward to this, and I can just see that that's just one asset. You have this assessment. It can just go, I can see it go viral. There's a lot of things out there like this, so you just have to, obviously you're differentiating yourself by taking bits and pieces you like, and then having a great team on board. I think the team there is key. You have a chat on board, you have someone else that is an expert on this topic. But I just wanted to ask you, before we move forward here with maybe some actionable tips on this, like what's your take on finding your passion? I think Cal Newport's book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, I kind of shifted a little bit. I'm a big proponent doing things you love. I want to do this, but when you're starting, I started doing interviews similar to this one, and it's not really when I started that I would know that, oh, I'm so passionate about doing interviews. This is what's going to take my business to the next level by doing the branding summit like 18 months later. I didn't know this, but I think I was passionate about the process, the learning, all these things. But honestly, like achieving mastery takes time, and then you can, develop your passion as you go. I think that's a lot of people see. You got to have some level of interest, and then you don't need to be this, oh, it's my passion. Okay, maybe you're passionate about fishing, but that's not a good market for you to go into for whatever reason, right? So it all depends. So what's your take on this?
It's a very it's a great question, and it's one that I think comes up every day, right? It's like every freaking Huffington Post article is about how to identify your passion and how to create a business around that. And I think that's something all of us, you, me, everyone in this industry is sort of a proponent of. And there is that other side that says sort of, forget about that. Let's focus on the opportunities. So should we go for the opportunity and the money, or do we go for the passion? It's all very confusing. And here's my personal take on it. First of all, I think that I think passion is one aspect or interest even, or a desire to be good at something, or a desire or something that is naturally like sits well with you, that you've been interested in as a kid and it's always been there. It's just one aspect of what it takes, I think, to be successful as an entrepreneur. And a lot of people put too much emphasis on identifying this passion. And over time, the foundational aspects of the assessment that we're creating started on a model that I, up until this point, have called the confluence model. And the confluence model is it's very simple. And it's just some fancy Venn diagram that essentially says your passion is one aspect of this. Your unique genius, which we can call your entrepreneurial style. There's an author by the name of Robert James Hamilton who literally has an assessment called the Genius Test. You might be familiar with him. Many people listening to this might be. So this idea of what he talks about in this Genius Test and identifying your entrepreneurial style is very important. But again, in my opinion, one aspect that needs to align with the passion. And the final aspect that is sort of a base layer in this assessment, and what I have used up until this point without any assessment, and what anybody, again, like anybody listening to this, They don't need that. It's only going to help you. But if you sort of approach it in this way, I think it'll make a lot more sense. The final aspect of the pie is, what are the existing markets and industries today in this world that are most aligned with you? So not only do they need to be hot or doing well and generating lots of revenue. You know, some people talk about like the big four industries, you know, making sure you're in health or business development or business, or, you know, making sure you're in sort of the growth, personal development. That's one way to look at it. But if you look at it at a higher level, there's around 7 to 10 industries in the online business world, depending on how you break it down, that are currently awesome. You know, things like e-commerce or software as a service. Then you've got this other bucket of like services. It might be, you know, that you create a service like Chris Ducker's virtual assistant finder, virtual staff finder, or you create a service that's actually like you doing consulting and coaching. Maybe you're a speaker and coach. And then there's sort of this other bucket of information and publishing and blogging and, you know, sort of developing a personal brand. And all of these are fantastic. But if you're sort of the developer type and you're trying to create a podcast and interview people, but then it's not aligned with your unique genius and you're not even interested in that aspect because it doesn't align with your passion, you might get pulled in one direction and feel good, but then this other area is going to be lacking. Yeah. So the idea is just fulfillment ultimately, right? It's like, what does it take to be fulfilled? And I think it takes many different things to combine. Gary Vee talked about this recently where he said, combine all your passions if you can. So if you like the New York Jets and you also like fishing and you like people and you like this, find a way to bring it all together. It doesn't have to be that you just go, well, because I like soccer, like me, I'm going to go create the next best shin guard and get that developed and become an Amazon, become an Amazon seller. So there's ways to combine multiple things to sort of find your alignment and be fulfilled long term.
Yeah. No, I like this way to look at it. And also, I think passion is one thing, obviously. That's great if you have it when you're starting. Yeah, that's great. If you are passionate about something, you're also maybe more aligned to do. Like, you can be good at this. You know, you gotta spend a lot of hours in order to be good. And I think that's what Robert Greene talks about, and also Cal Newport a little bit. Like, as you're like working so hard, like putting in the deep work, like for hours and hours, you kind of like this. You know, I mean, you're not gonna put in like 1,000+ hours of really focused or laser focused work into something if you don't like it. I mean, you're gonna give up way before that. And that's what they are talking about. You gotta at least have some level of interest into diving into this. You know, if you are in this space, like building a personal brand, you gotta at least have some interest in becoming the go-to person in this industry, because that's what's going to drive you to work harder than everyone else, so you can eventually position yourself as an expert, whether that is like with blogging, do your own summit, you know, write for some big websites and so on, like Entrepreneur, whatever, like get featured. But that takes time, and that's the long game we've been talking about here. So I kind of trying to bring it all back together here. So whether it's like Lewis House on his podcast, he talks a lot about like finding your passion, but it's not, I think there's something deeper than that too. Like, he's not just finding your passion, but it's actually about finding something you can make money from. And I think you're not gonna succeed in this world if you're not putting in the work. Whether you have your passion or just some interest when you're starting, doesn't matter. You gotta put in the work. And I think that's the way to look at it.
Yeah, you really need like an unlimited supply of energy ultimately. I mean, it has to be something. I often ask people when a lot of people have trouble even telling you what they like. I mean, I don't know, you know, there's a lot of people that just go, I don't know, I don't have any interests. I'm not passionate about anything. Where am I supposed to start? And what I often ask people is say, what is the thing that you do in your life, no matter what activity it is, even if it's just a type of movie that sort of puts you in a flow state? You know, what is that thing where time just sort of stops magically? And when you're doing this activity, for me, it's writing. When I am writing, time stops. The world is closed off to me, and I am in this magical place. And that has been my clue over and over and over again, that whatever I do, it needs to continue to develop toward that. always developing toward that. And if I need to do other various aspects in order to support my lifestyle, which I had to do in the beginning, you know, take on different projects or different income streams, whatever, that's okay. Because if I'm trying to develop mastery here, it's the long game. And if I do things to support it, that's completely fine. And again, it's like you mentioned, you know, making money in that. I mean, I also talk about kind of like, it's like a tipping scale. You don't necessarily have to do what I did, which I think is kind of crazy to most people. To just jump in and literally have no plan is crazy. There's nothing wrong with developing something on the side and just being like, wow, shit, if I had, you know, 5 hours a day to work on this, I'm only working on it for 2 hours a day, I would double my income next month. Okay, might be a good time. You know, so you kind of work your way to that point, like a little scale.
Yeah, and I think a little bit similar. Obviously, we have a very different background, but I didn't know when I started my site, you know, I just documenting my entrepreneurial journey, and it worked for me. It worked for other people like Sean Ogle to start this way of Location 180. That's kind of was one of my inspirations when I started this, and just see how it goes. I thought I had an inspiring story to share with people, especially, you know, a little way to stand out. I'm not, you know, from the US or English speaking countries, so I could stand out this way. And I thought, yeah, people got to hear what I have to say. And, you know, as time went on, you develop expertise and so on. I think that's what you're seeing as well. When you're starting, people didn't know who Arman Assadi was. You had to go out there, develop these authentic, powerful relationships. And now you're getting more consulting gigs. You're getting also more experience from helping big names with their launches. You know, now you develop this assessment and so on. So I think it's just an evolution, man. Like the long game again. Like you didn't know when you started your site or when you left Google, okay, I'm gonna be the one helping people with this assessment, finding your life's craft or identifying your craft. I think you didn't know that, but that was an evolution that you came to this conclusion now, or like, you know, over time, obviously.
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, exactly. You really don't know what the future holds for you. You can have an idea, and you should have some dreams and some ideal, and you do hold your destiny in your hand, truly. But you don't know what opportunities life's going to bring to you. What I've often found is I'll sort of have a vision of what I want to create, and every single time, without a doubt, something even better shows up. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So like I may have had in mind that I wanted to find a mentor, and I always knew that. And it was a struggle for me to find that person. And then someone even better showed up. And that sort of situation has happened to me over and over and over again. And there's a few ingredients in that, right? It's just knowing clearly where you're going, but taking actual, you know, Tony Robbins says like massive action. Like put your head down and get to work. And I think you do a really good job of that, to be honest. Mm-hmm. You know, you're someone that like really makes massive progress very quickly. And I think that's something that people can learn from you. A lot of people, they move a little too slowly and they think about it too long and they try to perfect it. It's about getting it done, man. Ultimately, It's about getting it done and getting better over time.
Yeah, and done is better than perfect too when you're starting out. So I just had to throw this in there. Like, yes, we are like, we want things to look good. We want our websites to look nice. But when you're starting, it's about shipping things and then perfect things as you go, and literally like act before you're ready there. And actually, I also want to wrap up here a little bit, but I want to leave our audience here like tuning into this interview. And I mean, thanks, Arman, first of all, for sharing your story a little bit, and also this you know, all this great stuff about finding your craft. But let's leave the audience with some actionable steps they can take right now, you know, after this interview. And whether, you know, when your assessment is ready, we can obviously share this with them too. But for now, there's some actionable steps that they can take to, you know, find their craft and, you know, take things to the next level for them.
Yeah. I think that there's a couple exercises that can be done to identify the first pie, to identify what the passions are in life. And there's actually a blog post that I have on this, which we can link to. Why don't I send it over to you and we can link to this in the show notes. But essentially, there's something called a power list. And the idea is to sit down and think about what are some of the things that inspire you? What are the things that you're fascinated by, that you're amused by, that sort of get you excited in life? These could be people, these could be places, these could be movies, these could be career roles, these could be things like love and sex, it could be anything. Write those things down and create a nice, strong list of a variety of categories that sort of could be adjectives or could be sort of like distinguishing markers for who you are. You know, anything. Like, for example, mine has inception on it, and then it has traveling to foreign places, and it has, you know, like writing and speaking and helping people. Like, if I look at all of that and find the common denominator, I will be able to see that ultimately what matters is that my value is helping people. If Arman isn't helping people, he kind of feels bad about himself. He feels like he's not doing anything in the world. So that's the first pie. You sort of get all that out, create your power list, and find the lowest common denominator between all of those various things. And you may find that, wow, there's a lot of aspects here that point to a desire to interview people and learn from them. And it's my fascination with people. So that might be what you pull out, you know, for example. And then the next sort of step to this is really critically understanding your style. So I think the best way to understand your style is to say, when am I in a flow state where the work I'm doing is very, I don't want to call it easy because nothing is easy, but it's a little more effortless. The creativity comes out more rapidly, more naturally. There's no force. Identify those things. What is your flow state? What are the areas where you sit at the computer or at your desk or whatever, and you're just like, ugh. Like for some people, it might be speaking. The last thing they ever want to do is speak. Or it might be like looking up SEO keywords, like keywords to use for their next blog post. They're like, oh my God, like I can't do this. I don't know where to start. Well, those are things you should make sure that's not your style. You know, research is not your style. Creating might be more your style. So understanding the different parts of your brain and your style, especially when it comes to management at a high level of your organization and business, right? Mm-hmm. And then that final piece is taking a look at the market. I would like everyone to sit down and look at the industry right now and identify those first two pies and fit yourself into the industry. So again, I have a post I call the 15 top online solopreneur businesses. And these are what I have identified as being the best opportunities, along with how to get started, along with who the person is to really look to, the thought leader to emulate within that industry. And I would recommend people take a look at that blog post and tie these three pieces together. Do it tonight or do it as a homework assignment over the weekend, and you will be light years beyond where you were if you walk away with that and say, now I know the direction. I'm just going to focus on that and make sure that every opportunity that comes your way that doesn't fit that filter is a no. So get really good at saying no. Oh, that conference sounds delightful. Oh, that interview opportunity sounds amazing, but thank you. I'm really I'm in the dungeon right now. I'm in the lab right now. And people will just go, wow, that person just gets a lot done. All right, fine. I'll grab a coffee with you, but I guess you don't want to do that. Cool. And they'll get used to that. And you can go and be like the Navid and create progress on what you're doing, because that's ultimately what matters.
Right. I really like this approach. And I mean, as we are getting busier and busier also as entrepreneurs, we have to get better at saying no to things. Like this opportunity might not be the right for you. Maybe, I mean, this person reaching out, they did a great job, but for whatever reason, but maybe that doesn't excite you. So you have to, as you're getting busier, more requests, get better at saying no. I think that's also a great takeaway. But I will link up this blog post you mentioned as well and below the video in the show notes here. So check that out. And anything else you'd like to add here, Arman? Like, where can people find you, connect more with you online?
Yeah, the last thing is, just let's connect. I mean, I truly do love interacting with people. I mean, a lot of people have written me and said, I really appreciate the fact that you enjoy hearing from people and that you always respond and you always create a conversation. So I really do. Invitation to email me, follow up, ask questions, tweet me. But the best place to find me is just armanassadi.com. And I'm going to be sort of calling out for beta testers very soon. So if you'd like to be a beta tester for this assessment and start to kind of be on the early list to see what's happening, obviously jump on the email list, and there's plenty of information there.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on here, Arman. It was always a pleasure chatting with you.
It was a big pleasure. Thanks for having me, Navid.